Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, fellow patriots, and even non-citizens who listen to this podcast from around the world. Welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also the president of the We the People Convention, which is a nonprofit organization based in Ohio, which is dedicated to protecting and defending our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Everything we do, from this podcast to our wonderful website, to our emails, our text messages, the events we sponsor, the donations we make to other conservative groups, are all paid for through the generous donations of the donors to the We the People Convention. And if you are able to help support our cause, we ask you to go to wethepeopleconvention.org and click on the donate button and give what you can. We thank all of our donors for your unbelievable support over the past 15 years. I woke up this morning to donations from Texas, West Virginia, California, Kansas, all over the country. We have members in all 50 states, and together we act in defense of our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So if you're new to the podcast, what this is a news aggregation show. So basically, we're going to talk about what happened this week that affects you and your future and your family's future and your community's future and our national future. We try to get rid of all the propaganda, focus on what actually happened that affects you, and then we try to find ways to take action to protect ourselves, to protect our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's what you can expect from today's podcast. For those of you who have been longtime viewers and listeners, thank you, man. Can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough. We have made a huge difference over the past 15 years, but we are facing the greatest challenges we've ever faced. And we're going to talk about that in this week's podcast. For those of you who are new, the flag is flying upside down. It is a warning to our fellow citizens that we, you and I, the people of the United States and of the world, are in danger to our life and our property, primarily from the threat from communist China, which is at war with us, even though they bribe officials all over the globe to make you think that we're not at war with them. Okay? It's just a fact. China is at war with us, and everything you see, from the trans movement to the bad decisions about the border and everything else the Biden regime has done in the last 4 years, is all pushed forward by communist China and their goal of destroying the United States so that they can rule the world. That's the facts. Okay, we'll talk about some of that in this week's podcast. If you're new to this podcast, you will learn that we always remember the January 6th political prisoners. Why? Because they represent our future if we are not successful in defeating the forces that are the forces of tyranny that are trying to impose their will upon you and I. Okay? That's what the political prisoners represent. They are being grossly overcharged, over-sentenced, and literally tortured and in violation of our U.S. law and international law. That's just a fact. There's been lots of prisoner stories out. I cover them here. We talk about our friend Jake Lang all the time. He's been tortured. He's not even have a trial. Hasn't even had a trial date set. They just moved it again. He's been in jail for almost 4 years with no trial, no bail, and in solitary confinement, starved, beaten, denied his rights. It's criminal what's happened to these political prisoners. So you need to know that our goal is to restore the rule of law and to restore equal justice under the law so that we can restore rule by law and get rid of rule by tyrannical men and women. That's what we have right now. Men and women who ignore the Constitution to wield the power of the state that we give them against we the people. That's how we define success. when we overthrow them, okay, through the ballot box, and then we used our laws not for revenge, but for justice to charge these people who have violated the rights of these political prisoners. That's what we intend to do. And that's just, and that's fair. But they'll say, oh, it's revenge, and Donald Trump's a dictator. Yeah, well, we know better. So before we go on with our podcast, I ask you just take 30 seconds to say a quick prayer, asking God to give strength, continued strength and courage to those who are suffering horribly in these gulags in DC and around the country, and to their families who've been without them and without their income and have struggled, and for their attorneys to guide them and keep them in the fight until we can elect Donald Trump, have them pardoned, get a new attorney general, and then go after the people who did this. Please pray for all of them. Thank you. Please keep them in your prayers every night, okay? Every day. Do not forget them. But for the grace of God, go I, right? That's our future in this totalitarian regime's plans if we don't fight and win this election and reclaim control of our federal government. Those are the stakes, folks. Don't fool yourself. Don't fool yourself. What they're doing to them, they will do to us like that. They could care less. They could care less about you, your rights, or anything else. So speaking of people who could care less, and on the January 6th topic, this story came out. Pelosi was warned the night before January 6th about potential violence and did nothing. She did nothing. She wanted it to happen. It was a setup. Pelosi's aides received warnings of Capitol breach the night before January 6th, but Pelosi blocked National Guard from the Capitol anyway. Two top House security aides under then Speaker Nancy Pelosi got stark warnings from the police the night before the January 6th riots that protesters might try to breach the U.S. Capitol through its tunnel system and block lawmakers from voting to certify Joe Biden's presidential election win. He didn't win. According to newly obtained memos and text messages, the documents obtained by Just the News also confirms that Pelosi's team played a role in the botched security planning of that fateful day. We have identified numerous open source comments indicating groups' intentions of finding the tunnel entrances and confronting blocking members of Congress. Capitol Police Chief Sean Gallagher wrote Deputy House Sergeant at Arms Tim Blodgett at 8:55 p.m. on January 5th, 2021 in an email that got forwarded less than an hour later to Blodgett's boss, then Sergeant at Arms Paul Irving. The second time is listed at Universal Time, doesn't matter. You can see on this story, you'll see the link to those emails. A second warning was sent later that evening about possible threats about Supreme Court justices, and the Sergeant of Arms office scheduled a briefing for Pelosi's then Chief of Staff, Terry McCulloch, the next morning, hours before the breach occurred, according to the message obtained from the House Administration's Oversight Committee Chairman Barry Loudermilk. Congressional investigators believe the texts and emails may explain why Pelosi, in a recently surfaced video shot by her daughter as they were fleeing the Capitol on January 6th, claiming responsibility for security failures that day, despite her claims in public to the contrary. She knew. They did nothing. So then this story comes out. And this is a bombshell. This is going to be a big deal, this report that they've been sitting on since April. January 6th bombshell. Secret Service got intel on high potential for violence, but didn't tell agents. Homeland Inspector General report urges changes to Secret Service training communications 3 months before July 13th Trump assassination attempt exposed additional flaws, and they did nothing because they did not want this report to be published. So even though they warned that Secret Service had these huge communication flaws, which could have prevented what happened to Donald Trump, they didn't act on it for political reasons. That's why it is just for these people to be fired and to be prosecuted. The Secret Service developed intelligence that there was a high potential for violence before the January 6th Capitol riot, but failed to share the information with its agents guarding Donald Trump, Mike Pence, or Kamala Harris that fateful day, according to a bombshell report delivered to Congress on Thursday that exposed a fresh round of failures by the Presidential Protection Agency. Homeland Security Inspector General Joseph Kafari's report was forced into the public by pressure from House Administrative Oversight Subcommittee Chairman Barry Loudermilk, and it is confirmed earlier Just News reporting, including that Secret Service whisked Harris, then the Vice President-elect, within 20 feet of an undetected pipe bomb at the Democratic National Committee headquarters in Washington because it failed to employ its normal explosive detection tools. The report obtained by Just the News not only adds dramatic new details about security and intelligence failures of January 6th, but also offered powerful new evidence to the growing inquiry into how the Secret Service failed to detect the gunman who wanted Trump at the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Okay? We're just getting into it, folks. Just getting into it. You can't let this go. What happened on January 6th, 2021? Was one of the biggest national scandals ever, and the people who were responsible have not yet been brought to justice. We must do that. We must write the history of this event. It wasn't an insurrection, ladies and gentlemen. It was a coup d'etat. That's what it was, and we're going to prove that when the facts come out. They're just getting out there. So this was also January 6th related news. GOP-led House intervenes in Steve Bannon's January 6th legal case, making good on Speaker Johnson's promise. The GOP-led House has quietly filed a rare intervention in Steve Bannon's contempt of Congress case, arguing the Democrat-led House January 6th Select Committee failed in its formation to follow chamber rules, invalidating the two subpoenas it served Bannon that he ignored and ultimately put him behind bars. The House brief argues the Select Committee was improperly constituted and that neither then Democratic Speaker Nancy Pelosi nor the committee leadership followed the directives of House Resolution 503, which established the committee. The amicus curiae brief filed by the House General Counsel 9 days ago fulfills a promise from Speaker Mike Johnson in June to intervene in the case. Bannon, a former Trump White House political advisor, refused two subpoenas from the committee, citing executive privilege. He was convicted and sentenced under two charges of contempt of Congress. The intervention of the House under Johnson, a Louisiana Republican, comes as Bannon is appealing the case. The new intervention from the House undermines the justification of the committee's subpoena and potentially provides ammunition for the appeal. I'm glad to see this. It's too little too late. However, wouldn't it be great if Bannon can win the appeal and get out of prison by September so that he could have 2 months, September and October, before the election to help us message and motivate people and win the election? Kudos to the House for doing that. Okay, enough January 6th news. We got to talk more about the assassination attempt. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. There's just no end to it. New video emerges of shooter running across the roof as Trump is speaking. A video has emerged of wannabe assassin Thomas Matthew Crooks literally running across the infamous sloped rooftop for which he was subsequently tried to kill Donald Trump while the former president was speaking. Rather than army crawling, Crooks was seen standing straight up and running across the top of the American Glass Research Building. The video has only just come to light because it was filmed by James Copenhaver, one of the victims who was wounded and has been recovering. So get this, the guy is filming, he's behind Trump, okay? As you can see in this picture, you can see he's behind Trump and they've got a circle of where the guy is on the roof, but it's much clearer in the video. And we'll link this page on our podcast page so you can watch the short video. But the guy is filming Trump and the shooter who shoots him and Trump is literally in the picture. Wow, just crazy. Copenhaver was in the hospital for 2 weeks and is now still recovering in a rehabilitation center. Attorney Joseph Friedman, the law offices of Max Friedman, told Fox News. The unbelievable footage has people once again asking how on earth the Secret Service snipers didn't notice Crooks. Yeah, how on earth could that possibly have happened, right? How could that happen? So then we had the acting Secret Service director testifying in front of the Senate. So last week they were in front of the House, and Cheadle, the head of Secret Service, ended up stepping down because they're just sandbagging this whole thing. It was brutal. Okay, here's a report. Acting Secret Service director played a key role in denying extra resources for Trump rallies. This was something that we knew as he was testifying, and we couldn't believe that none of the senators knew it and asked him. Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe is currently testifying before the Senate about the assassination attempt on Donald Trump and the agency's failures leading to that attempt, in which one person was killed and 2 others seriously injured. Rowe has thus far refused to admit that any resources were denied to Trump's team and has been defensive and cagey under intense questioning. Rowe's testimony claiming that Trump wasn't denied any resources that fateful day in Pennsylvania, but a new report at Real Clear Politics says Rowe was directly involved. He was responsible. Acting Secret Service Director Ronald Rowe was directly involved in denying additional security resources and personnel, including counter snipers, to further President Trump's rallies and events, despite repeated requests by the agents assigned to Trump's detail in the 2 years leading up to his July 13th attempted assassination, according to several sources familiar with decision making. Rowe succeeded former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle, who resigned last week after bipartisan calls following her widely panned testimony at the House. But both Rowe and Cheadle were directly involved in decisions denying requests for magnetometers, additional agents, and other resources to help screen rally goers at large outdoor Trump campaign gatherings. It was Rowe's decision alone to deny counter sniper teams to any Trump event outside of driving distance from D.C., these sources have asserted. Okay? So the guy who's now in charge of Trump's security teams was the guy who denied requests by those same security teams for additional resources. You want another little nugget that's out there? Both Cheadle and Rowe, they were the ones who deleted the Secret Service text messages from January 6th. From January 6th. Okay? These are bad people. These are bad people. Okay? And so Senator Roger Marshall is pushing for a crisis intervention team. Jack Posobiec hosted Kansas Senator Roger Marshall on Thursday's episode of Human Events Daily, during which he revealed he partook in a fiery congressional hearing surrounding the assassination attempt of Donald Trump. Marshall stated that he thinks the backdrop of the hearing is that the folks back home don't trust the FBI. You think? And then they have no confidence in the Secret Service, and therefore he begins to wonder if their families are safe. He said that his focus in the investigation is pushing for a crisis intervention team to enter the picture because at the current rate the investigation has been progressing, a solution could take months, if not years, for Congress to figure out what went wrong. No kidding. And what does that do when Trump is having rallies like every day or every other day? Okay. So Marshall says, my focus is getting a crisis intervention team to come in there and turn that place upside down. And then number 2 is, I think we need to take the investigation outside the halls of Congress, that we need a non-political commission, people that are experts that can dedicate 10 or 12 hours a day for the next 3 weeks to jump in the middle of this so we don't have a repeat performance of this in the next 2 or 3 months. I think it's a great idea. And if you know Senator Marshall, please, encourage him to do that. Okay? We got to push for that because they ain't going to get it done. Their bureaucratic incompetence is on full display. And so if it wasn't on full display to you yet, well, this will put it on full display. Secret Service sniper lashes out at Secret Service bosses, warns of a second assassination attempt. Man, this is a bombshell, kids. This is a blockbuster. An email allegedly sent by a United Secret Service counter sniper to the agency's uniform division on Monday night raises concerns that little has changed within the agency, making another assassination attempt before the 2024 presidential election likely. The counter sniper blames the Secret Service leadership, excuse me, excuse me. He blames the Secret Service leadership for intervening and tying the hands of agents at the July 13th rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, which saw former President Donald Trump shot in the ear, 2 rally goers wounded, and Trump supporter Corey Comparatore killed. Additionally, they say they will not rest until, this person who wrote this email says, they will not rest until at least 5 senior agency officials are forced out. Kimberly Cheadle resigned as director last week. This agency needs to change. If not now, when? The next assassination attempt in 30 days, the email reads. The USS counter sniper ominously adds, because we all should expect another attempt to happen before November. We've exposed our inability to protect our leaders due to a lack of leadership. The comments echo the warning that others have been making. And the U.S. counter sniper claims the technicians who worked on the July 13th in Butler, PA, did their job with their hands tied. Secret supervisors, quote, know better, and the foot soldiers working made the best of a bad situation. Sadly, we have fallen short for years. We just got lucky and looked good doing it, the email states, raising concerns about systemic issues in the Secret Service, from training protocols to security plans and leadership. The author continues, I have conveyed these thoughts to not only supervisors, to include the current captain, but those responsible for training us, only to be brushed off as if those with less experience somehow know more than me. So this guy sounds like a veteran of the agency. The counter sniper's email concludes with a damning indictment of leadership. Failure is not an option, and on July 13th, we failed. Not because of commitment or sense of dedication, because our supervisors knew better and thought our concerns were less important. The motto of the U.S. Secret Service is cover your ass. The counter sniper concludes, accusing the agency's leaders of covering up their mistakes. So I will post this story on our podcast page, and you can actually read his email. That's pretty damning, folks. There it is. There's the email. You'll be able to read his email. So I do want you to know that because of these hearings and what's going on, since taking the reins last week, Mr. Rowe, who's the acting director, said he's already started stepping up Secret Service security protocols to ensure that incidents such as July 13th will not happen again. One key change is the agency will roll out a common operating platform to allow local law enforcement a direct communications channel to Secret Service agents on the scene. Wow, what a concept. Really bright, guys. Yeah, now let's do that. Mr. Rowe said the Secret Service is also planning to expand its use of drones to ensure that people and places we protect are safe. Yeah. He said the agency has already strengthened protection for all protectees and is conducting threat assessment for all of those people. It has also started protecting 6 new people, including Senator J.D. Vance, who was recently named vice presidential running mate, and independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., to whom officials have previously denied protection on multiple occasions. Okay? So something is happening. Is it enough? Because the people who are still in charge are still in charge. Okay, the people in charge of the original stuff are still in charge. And that's what this sniper is saying. And so I really agree with Senator Marshall saying, we need to act quickly. Bring in a team of 15 former Secret Service snipers and say, go in there, figure out what the hell's going on, and tell us who should be fired and what protocols should change. Right? Will they do it? God willing, please. Anything you can do to help advance that, please do it. Okay? Please do it. So, one thing I did want to put out that is really good, because last week I said that the Secret Service was telling Donald Trump, you shouldn't have any more outdoor rallies. And Trump was hesitant. And this week, he is planning more outdoor rallies despite Secret Service warnings against them. And I was glad to hear this. Donald Trump promised on Friday that despite warnings from the Secret Service, he would hold more outdoor rallies soon. He said, I will continue to do outdoor rallies, and Secret Service agreed to substantially step up their operation, the former president wrote on his Truth Social site. They are very capable of doing so. No one can ever be allowed to stop or impede free speech or gathering. Okay? And he's going to go back to Butler, to the scene of the crime, literally, to honor the victims and have an outdoor rally. And I don't think this is foolish, because they should be able to protect him. That it didn't happen because they did everything they could and the shooter was just so much smarter than them or used some technique that was unbelievable. No, it happened because they screwed it all up. They made so many mistakes. They're incountable. Okay? If you don't do that, it should be safe. And I was glad to see that people are still going to his rallies. Okay? And we're going to talk about some of that stuff here in a minute, because what's going on at these rallies is, again, folks, we're in election season now, baby, and it's going to get ugly real soon. Okay? So this goes down as one of the most misleading headlines of all time. Harris wins Democratic presidential nomination. She won it, did she? Yeah, she was installed. She didn't win anything. Oh, yeah, they had a conference call with delegates who voted for her. Yeah, that's like Maduro in Venezuela. We'll talk about that in the second half of the show. What a joke. It's a fraud. She's a fraud. The whole campaign that they're putting on for her is a fraud. And you want me to prove that to you? You want me to prove to you that this is all gaslighting? The polls, all this stuff? Yeah, watch this little video. You'll get a kick out of this.
Okay, just in case you did not know it, on yesterday, Kamala Harris had a rally in Atlanta, and it gave you like, oh, Atlanta's hype for her. Like, people are so excited for her. I know you felt it. I know you saw it. She even brought out ratchet Megan Thee Stallion, shaking her butt, twerking for a political rally, talking about hotties for Harris. That did not turn your stomach. Like, that is pandering, like, if you've ever heard it. But that's not the catch 'em. Do not let that rally looking fool you, because Fulton County has been doing this for years. Before the rallies, they get busloads and they go pick up the homeless people. They offer them food, drink, and a little change to come to the rally, so the rallies will look full. Now, you got to realize she just dealt with the rally, and I want to say it was Pennsylvania, where it was less than 60 people. It was quite embarrassing for her. And so that's not going to go down in this blackety black city. Okay. It's just not going to go down. They are.
So there you have it. AstroTurf. For those of you who are new and those of you who are old, when we started the Tea Party back in, 2008, 2009, 2010, Nancy Pelosi said we were AstroTurf. What is AstroTurf? Fake grass. We were grassroots. She had never seen real grassroots, because in Nancy Pelosi's entire history and in your entire life, every rally, every protest you ever saw from Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton or Antifa or anybody else, okay? They were paid, folks. They're paid. It's not real. It's a show, okay? And so Joe Biden couldn't draw flies, remember? Just weeks ago, couldn't draw flies. And Kamala Harris hasn't drawn flies. But you're supposed to believe that she goes to Atlanta and thousands of people show up. They tried to claim 10,000 and that was debunked. But they were in an indoor arena. They put up curtains to make it look smaller and it looked full. That woman just told you that they're paid. And I'm telling you from firsthand experience, this isn't, how many people are paid to go to Trump rallies? That would be zero. Because I know when we led rallies going to Washington, D.C. on 9/12 okay, rallies and the rallies against Obamacare and all that stuff, 1 million people. When we would go to protest and we would see counter protesters, they would actually talk about, I ain't getting paid enough to do this crap. I only got $25 for this 3 hours. I'm not doing that. Well, we're taking time off from work, paying for our own transportation, buy our own meals to go fight for our freedom and liberty. They're phonies. Everything about this is phony. You know, you want more evidence? Okay, how about this? Marketing agency pays influencers on social media $150 cash to boost Kamala Harris on social media. Okay? This just came out. A company known as Launch Viral has been offering to pay influencers $150 cash to post memes in support of Kamala Harris, to tag the president and then encourage fans to like, share, and follow Harris as she is running for the presidency. According to multiple posts from influencers who were contacted, they were sent messages from the influencer agency known as Launch Viral to get paid in order to make posts supporting Harris online. Steve McGrew posted an email that read, Steve, paid post opportunity, Kamala Harris presidential campaign. They are trying to get me to be a paid shill for Kamala, but let this be a lesson. They are paying people to pretend to support Kamala. Okay? So it's all paid for. Don't buy it, and don't let other people buy it. Talk about this, okay? Do not believe any poll that's going on right now. It's literally propaganda. The polls that say, oh, Kamala Harris is, closing the gap and even taking the lead over Trump. Nobody knows that. That's not true, okay? Think of this like a prize fight, okay? Like a fist fight, okay? A boxing match, more what I'm meaning. Is that, so they were on the ropes with Joe Biden. Now they got Kamala Harris, and they've come off the ropes, just a flurry, right? Everything changed like that. Boom. She's dumb. Everyone hates her. She's incompetent. Now she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. She's brilliant. She's all the things she was, the border czar. She's not the border czar. She's not against fracking. Everything she ever said, they're trying to reverse, okay? That's like a flurry of punches. When you're a boxer, when they're doing the flurry of punches, you just put up your arms and deflect them. You don't have to punch back. Let them punch themselves out and then punch them in the head and knock them out. That's what we're doing. That's what you've got to do. So you've got to share these stories that I'm posting so that people understand you're being lied to. This is not real. She is as phony as a $3 bill, folks. And you want more evidence of what's going on? Okay, how about this one? Boy, here's what happens when you try to Google the Trump assassination attempt on Google. Okay, look at this. There's something amiss with Google's search of the assassination attempt against Donald Trump on July 13th. It doesn't show up in the autocomplete prompt. If you search assassination attempt of Donald Trump's nearly fatal rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, is nowhere to be found. Why? Why? Because people were sympathetic to Trump, right? Like Zuckerberg, and you're going to see some other people, okay? They don't want them to have that sympathy. They don't want them to have that sympathy. So we're going to hide it. Google is actively interfering with this election. They have in 2016 and 2020, and we told you and you knew that. Do not use Google. And again, I've told you, I haven't used a search engine in months. I'm using this AI tool called Perplexity AI, PERPLEXITY.com, perplexityai.com. You just search on that. You can download an app, okay, on your phone, so it's not even go through the internet. It gives you better results, and it's not biased, because when I searched on, Trump assassination, it gave me the full story. Biden dropped out. Is the big tech giant trying to bury the results and interfere with this election? Yes. He said, here's Rob Snyder said, I saw someone post on X that Google was suppressing President Trump's assassination attempt under Google search engines, and it's true. That is why Google needs to be broken up by the FCC. If the government thought the long-distance phone companies had a monopoly, Google's way worse. And here he shows, you say, assassination attempt, and it says on Truman, on Reagan, on Slovakia, on Bob Marley, okay? You can't find it. You can't find it. And so it goes way beyond that. Rigged tech. They said that the shooting never happened. Remember that? The MSNBC and those people were saying it was faked. It was staged, even though a man was killed and 2 were wounded. 3 were wounded, including Trump. Falsely claimed that the picture was doctored and then hid the picture and downplayed the news and search. Folks, this is what's going on. But here's the difference. The difference is that Elon Musk bought Twitter. And now we have a platform where the truth can go out. Rumble and True Social. We can show this, okay? And then Donald Trump was being interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, and he had this to say, and I think this is really important.
Said that the picture wasn't altered. At first they said it was altered, and then they said no, it was a bug.
So
it was a mistake.
Mark
So my
Zuckerberg,
point is
right.
These companies would not allow any information out about what happened.
So Mark Zuckerberg called me. First of all, he called me a few times. He called me after the event, and he said that was really amazing. It was very brave, and and he actually announced he's not going to support a Democrat because he can't, because he respected me for what I did that day. I think what I did maybe was to me it was a normal response. But I was called by Mark Zuckerberg yesterday, the day before, on this same subject, and he actually apologized. He said they made a mistake, et cetera, and they're correcting the mistake. Google, nobody called from Google. One of the things, like doing a show like yours, your show, you see it on Fox, but where you really see it is all over the place. They take clips of your show that you're doing right now with me, and if I do a good job, they're going to vote for me. They're going to vote for me because it's not just on Fox. It's on Fox is a smaller part of it. You're on all over those little beautiful cell phones. You're all over the place. You have a product. You have a great product. You have a great brand. So you have to get out. You have to get out. You have to do things like your show and other shows. And Google has been very bad. They've been very irresponsible. And I have a feeling that Google is going to be close to shut down because I don't think Congress is going to take it. I really don't think so. Google has to be careful. Now, I will say this. I believe Mark Zuckerberg, he called me a lot. They are working on, and I think they fixed it.
But what
and he's not doing what he did 4 years ago with the $500 million, I don't believe.
That's a big deal, folks. That's a big deal. Zuckerberg apologized, said we're going to make sure they can find the picture on Facebook and on Instagram. It's like going back to 2016 where we dominated in social media. That's how we elected Trump. That's why they took it away in 2020. But now we got some of it back. That's why you need to be on Twitter and follow me, Tom Z WTPC, and then share the stuff that I give you. And you can even copy the links of those posts I put on Twitter and then text them to people. Because even if you don't have a Twitter account, it'll open up, okay? If you text it to them. We have to start getting the message out to overcome the media bias. But Trump is right that Maria Bartiromo, those clips are all over Rumble and YouTube and not just on Fox. So that's what you got to do because it works. We have to control the narrative. Kamala Harris is a phony. She's a fraud. There's videos, I'm going to show you a video in a second that just exposes that. You have to share it with everyone, okay? You have to share it, and that's your main responsibility right now, okay? That's what you got to do. But there's big things happen. You just saw Zuckerberg, call them, and it's not going to hurt us now. That's a big deal, okay? That's a big deal. This is a big deal. Former PayPal president ditches Democratic Party, endorses Trump. Now, I can't share with you the entire post. This guy posted it on Twitter, and I shared it in my page. So if you go Tom Z WTPC, and I put it on True Social as well. Same thing, Tom Z WTPC True Social. Okay, but I use Twitter mostly. Here's what this guy did. Former president of PayPal, David Marcus, announced he has switched political parties, endorsed Donald Trump via X. I'm crossing the Rubicon and backing the Republican Party and President Trump. Many, including a former version of myself, get trapped in a mental framework that becomes their identity and prevents them from radically evolving their thinking with new facts and information. I finally broke free from it. He broke free from woke. He broke free from woke. David Marcus is aligned with Trump on technology innovation like crypto and AI. We'll talk about crypto in a little bit, as well as foreign policy, especially the Middle East. Marcus said on Iran, this administration, the Biden administration, the Harris administration is continuing a misguided Obama-era plan to bring Iran closer to the West by unfreezing Trump-era sanctions, thus giving the mullahs regime the ability to fund terrorism and pursue its anti-American, anti-Israel, and anti-Jewish agenda. Marcus completed his post by referencing the attempts on former President Trump's life at a rally in Butler, PA. It is impossible to close this post without mentioning President Trump's recent assassination attempt. The courage and resolve he displayed seconds after being hit by a bullet was awe-inspiring for his followers and detractors alike. This was a man, however imperfect, who at that moment incarnated the American spirit in the most vivid way, starting to bring a split nation together, said Marcus. In this pivotal moment, confronted with the choices we have, I am endorsing and supporting the return to a Republican administration in 2025. Okay? Now you can read, he goes into real detail about how the Democrats are just crazy and wrong. And he tried to fundraise for them. And he saw it was totally corrupt. That's how you win. Donald Trump going to speak at the Black Journalists Convention, which a lot of people criticize because he got an ambush question. He did a great job. I'm telling you, people respect the fact that he shows up where they don't think he should go. Kamala didn't go. Donald Trump did. I promise you, he won more from doing that than he lost. Okay? It's important. We all have to have courage. Now, I was extremely upset by this. Head of Project 2025 steps down following Trump criticism. And President Trump posted on Truth Social something his campaign wrote celebrating the demise of Project 2025. Well, I'm here to push back because it ain't dead, all right, despite what they said. Trump team trumpets the demise of Project 25 to further distance the campaign from Project 25, but it will continue and will be a key part of the Trump administration. How do I know that? In an email to Tom Zawistowski from Spencer Creighton, co-director, our second in charge at Project 25, he wrote, "We are not abandoning our work. The database and training are live and will continue to be so. Thank you for your steadfast support and that of your organization." Okay? They're going to keep going. The director of Heritage Foundation's Project 25, Paul Dans, is departing from the role, conservative think tank President Kevin Roberts said Tuesday. When we began Project 2025 in April 2022, we set a timeline for the project to conclude its policy drafting after the two-party conventions this year, and we are sticking to that timeline, Roberts said in a statement. Paul Dans, who built the project from scratch and bravely led this endeavor over the past 2 years, will be departing the team and moving up to the front where the fight remains. We're extremely grateful for his and everyone's work on Project 2025 and dedication to saving America. Our collective efforts to build a personnel apparatus for policymakers at all levels will continue. Dans was previously chief of staff for the Office of Personnel Management in the Trump administration. His exit comes as Democrats have made Project 2025 central to their campaign attacks on Republicans and former President Trump. The project, made up of a coalition of more conservative organizations and many Trump allies, includes a 900-page hard-right policy blueprint intended to guide the next conservative administration and a bank of individuals who could staff it. It's not hard-right. It's center. It's what our country believes in. It's constitutional. And there's a link in this story. If you go to this story at wethepeopleconvention.org, there's a link that says, Get the Truth About Project 2025, where they rebut all the invalid criticism, okay? Needless to say, Trump campaign advisor, and be wary of this guy, Chris LaCivita, said at a CNN Politico event at the Republican National Convention earlier this month that Project 2025 was a pain in the A. Oh, really? It's a pain in the A. Well, why was that? After the news of Dan's exit became known, Trump's campaign released a statement that essentially welcomed the news. President Trump's campaign has been very clear for over a year that Project 2025 had nothing to do with the campaign, did not speak for the campaign, and should not be associated with the campaign or the president in any way. The statement from LaCivita and Trump advisor Susie Wiles. Be careful of Susie Wiles as well. Reports of Project 25's demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you, they said. Really? Really? So what's really going on here? The Daily Beast first reported Danz would depart from his role, but a source close to Project 2025 told The Hill that the Daily Beast's suggestion that the staff changes there indicated that Project 25 would shut down was incorrect, as I just showed you from the email I got. Still, the director's exit amid the criticism from the Trump campaign, plus a spotlight on the tensions between the conservative nonprofit sphere that hopes to push policy to the right and the campaign operatives wary of alienating swing voters and looking to ensure victory in November. So they're claiming, okay, we can't show that we're going to do this because it will alienate swing voters. That's supposedly the reason why Trump didn't defend it, as I told you he should. Trump should have defended it. He should have said, I didn't write it. I don't own it. I'm not saying I'm going to even implement it, but a lot of people who work for me are involved and they're good people and they're doing good work. But I have one question for you, CNN, Politico, Axios. Where's your plan? You can read their 900 pages. Where's your plan? Where was the plan that caused Joe Biden to sign 100 executive orders the day he was sworn in? Where was that plan? Where was the plan that you told the American people you were going to open the borders wide open? You were going to cut off our natural gas, and other fossil fuels. Where was the plan about you were going to involve us in the war in Ukraine? Where was that plan? You never showed. So what's your plan if you win this time? Show us our plan. Paul Danz and Heritage can defend their plan. Show the American people your plan. They couldn't do it. They wouldn't do it because they're communists and they want to do what they're doing, which I just showed you, is lie to the American people about Kamala Harris and about Joe Biden and everything else. They are liars. They are Saul Alinsky-ites. They cannot tell the truth because nobody wants what they're selling, so they sell lies. Project 2025 is the truth. It should have been defended. But why did this happen? Well, here's a little insight that might help you. Under Paul Danz's leadership, Project 2025 has completed exactly what it set out to do, bringing together over 110 leading conservative organizations to create a unified conservative vision motivated to devolve power from the unelected administrate and returning to the people. This tool was built for any future administration to use, okay? But what this was really about, this was about the people behind Trump not wanting to give up control over who gets appointed where. That's what this was. This wasn't Trump. This was this Susie Weiss and this other guy. Look, Friedrich. What's his last name? His last name is Chris LaCivita, LaCivita, and Susie Weiss, protecting their power because that's all they care about is power, not about our country. That's what's wrong with this. So go to project2025.org, sign up, get trained to serve in the next conservative administration. Because I got news for you. Susie Weiss and Lasivida and those guys, they got people in place in their minds for the top positions. They don't have 4,000 people to put in the government. They don't have it. Okay? Trump's going to have no other option but to put you in the agriculture department, in the Treasury, in the Small Business Administration. Do not back down. Go to project2025.org and sign up. And if you're already signed up, God bless you, because you're a patriot who's going to help save this country. But I came across this interesting article, okay, that says Trump looks to tap Senate Republicans to fill his cabinet. I thought this was interesting. After the July 13th assassination attempt, the Trump campaign appears confident with its forward momentum, despite some tightening in the polls. Despite the tightening of the polls, the Trump campaign knows it still has a fight on its hand, but they're getting busy building a cabinet with several Republican senators positioned to take up those seats. Who's that? Republican allies of former President Trump expect him to draw heavily from the Senate GOP conference to fill his cabinet if he is elected to a second term in November, with Senators Bill Hagerty from Tennessee, Tom Cotton from Arkansas, Marco Rubio from Florida, and Tommy Tuberville from Alabama in contention for top-level jobs. That's interesting. Although he is still a freshman senator, Trump's choosing Missouri Senator Eric Schmidt for Attorney General is almost guaranteed. That's a good guy. All right? But you should know that's what they're thinking. Sources are touting Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville for Secretary of Education. However, he would make more sense as Secretary of Defense. Tuberville has been a staunch advocate for our fighting men and against the woke and transgender ideology that's crippling our military readiness. Some see Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton as a clearer choice because of his extensive and decorated military background. He sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee. So that's interesting, Tuberville or Cotton. Tennessee Senator Bill Hagerty is being floated as Treasury Secretary because of his successful private career at an equity firm. However, his ties as the 2012 National Finance Chair for then presidential candidate Mitt Romney may not do him any favors. Yeah, that would exclude him in my book. As Vice Chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, Florida Senator Marco Rubio has already distinguished himself as a knowledgeable statesman and a fighter on intelligence, foreign policy, and Chinese infiltration and aggression. Rubio is being floated as a potential CIA director, director of national intelligence, or Secretary of State. I don't trust Marco Rubio. He's part of the Gang of Eight or whatever it's called, and I think he's compromised by the national security agencies. I think Mike Flynn has got to be the person for that job. Strong Trump surrogate Secretary South Carolina Senator Tim Scott is being floated for both Secretary of Human Services and Urban Development or Secretary of Health and Human Services because of his strong business background in the insurance industry. I don't know about that. I think that, Tim Scott's a nice person. He's like Ben Carson to me. He hasn't proven to me that he's tough enough to implement the changes that Project 2025 is going to bring to show how we restore the rule of law in our representative government. You've got to gut these agencies. They are so full of Obama era corruption that you've got to have someone tough enough to fire 30% of the workforce. I don't see Tim Scott doing that. Okay. So, the whole Harris campaign is a fraud. The social media, some of it, Google and those people are trying to interfere. They're paying influencers, right? They're paying, they're astroturfing Kamala's rallies. You've got to expose all of that. One of the ways you do that is by downloading this video from the We the People Convention website and sharing it with everyone, because the Trump campaign is doing the right thing. Focus on issues, not on personalities. I don't care whether Kamala Harris's parents were American citizens and I don't care. I don't care about her cackle. I don't care about it. I care about her policy positions because they're horrible and the American voter will reject them. Here you go.
If you thought Joe Biden was radical, just wait until you get to know Kamala Harris. She's dangerously liberal.
I am Kamala Harris. My pronouns are she and her.
You know, for far too long, the status quo thinking has been to believe that by putting more police on the street, you're going to have more safety. And that's just wrong.
You're confident this border's secure?
We have a secure border.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct.
People who are convicted in prison, like the Boston Marathon bomber, on death row, they should be able to vote?
I think we should have that conversation.
Abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position that you agree with?
Listen, I think there's no question that we've got to critically re-examine ICE, and we need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's new darling of the party. She 60 Minutes this weekend proudly calling herself a radical, and she's promoting policies like saying that every single carbon emission in the country, every car, should be eliminated within the next 11 years, everything from a 70 to 80% tax rate. Do you agree that she could possibly, in this ideology of the socialist left, could splinter your party?
No, you know, I think that's fantastic.
Okay, there you have it. There are the issues. Your job, my job, is to share that everywhere to everyone. That's who she is. That's not our opinion. That's her record. Like I said last week, the funny thing is there's this thing called the internet, and everything she ever did or said is there. And her aides can say, oh, she's not anti-fracking. Oh, she's not for banning the police. She's not for open borders. She was never the border czar. Horse hockey. Your job is to prove it, okay? And then make sure everyone knows it so they understand if you want to have a better life, if you want to change the direction of the country back towards the way it was when Donald Trump was president, you got to vote not just for Donald Trump, but for every Republican on the ballot. Everyone. U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, State House, State Senate, local, county, city council, mayors, county commissioners, whatever's on your ballot, every Republican. That's the only way you're going to change the direction of the country and your life for the better. That's what you've got to tell everyone. And then say, if you want to change the direction of the country, vote for every Republican. And by the way, are you registered to vote? And if they say no, pull out your phone and register them online right then and there. That's how we win. Okay? I hope you've enjoyed the first half of this podcast. We're going to take a little break. I sure appreciate you being with us. I know it's a lot. We got a lot of stuff coming up in the second half of the show as well. So just stay with us. We'll be back after these short messages. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. What, something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People Convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right. And we do thank all of you who donate to the We the People Convention. Obviously, in this political year, we need your support more than ever. And anyone who can help, please go to wethepeopleconvention.org and give what you can. We greatly appreciate it. I have to correct the video because it's older. We are on Twitter and Truth Social at TomZWTPC for We the People Convention. TomZWTPC. Okay. So follow us. We have an opportunity here to share information using social media that we didn't have in 2020. We need to take advantage of it. Okay. That's the bottom line. We're in an information war for the most part. But now I'm going to talk to you about election information, because we're all concerned about, cheating in the elections, illegals voting, and there's lots going on. So I want to get into that right now. We'll try to move a little faster on some of these stories because I have a lot of stuff in the second half here. So just kind of hang in there and see if you can follow along. Mississippi law allowing ballots to be received after Election Day can stand. This I just don't understand. A Mississippi law that allowed ballots received up to 5 days after the election to be counted as lawful, a federal judge ruled on July 28th. U.S. District Judge Luis Grijalva Jr. pointed in part to the Uniformed and Overseas Citizen Absentee Voting Act, which governs ballots for citizens residing overseas. But what he's saying is that the reason we had delayed ballots could be counted from overseas is because it took a long time for them to arrive. A lot of them were from our troops, okay, stationed in Korea and stuff. Well, now he's saying that applies to you when you live in town and your ballot doesn't arrive by Election Day. He's saying it's valid that it can arrive 5 days later. I disagree. I hope this gets appealed. The ruling dismisses cases brought against Mississippi officials by the Republican National Committee, the Mississippi Republican Party, and the Libertarian Party of Mississippi. I hope that they appeal. This just doesn't make any sense. And I really hope we can get back control of our government and Congress can act and say, it is election day, right? The first Tuesday of November is election day. All ballots must be in and counted on that day, and the results made public by midnight that day, or they don't count. That's what's got to happen. And I believe Congress can do that. They can't tell you how to run your election in the states. The courts have ruled that, but they can say it's election day. This is the second thing that's kind of out there. This is good news. Michigan judge shuts down Secretary of State's lax ballot signature guidance for good. So this has been a problem with Michigan that's doing everything they can to cheat. They're doing everything they can. A Michigan Court of Claims judge ruled Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson's guidance on absentee ballot signature verification violated the state's constitution and ordered it removed and a final order signed on Tuesday. In the ruling, Judge Christopher Yates reiterated that Benson's initial presumption of validity in signature verification of absentee ballot applications and envelopes mandated by the December 2023 guidance manual issued by defendants is incompatible with the Constitution and laws of Michigan. Basically, what the Secretary of State of Michigan said is, you have to assume the signature is valid. You have to assume that, not assume it's invalid and check it, okay? This ruling throws that out. Benson's lawyers tried to argue the validity presumption was not prescribed, just a modest initial presumption. No, they were just approving everything. Yates didn't buy it, the judge said, and he basically said it has to change. The Secretary of State's office took efforts to comply, but here's the problem. The damage for Benson's guidance, remember, it was in December of 2023. It was employed in the primary. The initial presumptive guidance was in place for the February 2024 presidential primary, where Michigan clerks had to verify signatures on 1.4 million absentee ballots applications and at least 934,000 return ballot envelopes. So those got approved without any scrutiny. But at least the court ruled they can't do it for the November election in Michigan. Small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Okay? Now, we are all worried about illegals voting. Why else would you bring however many, 10, 12, 14 millions of illegals into the country if you weren't going to do a Cloward-Pliven type thing right before the election and have them all go register to vote when you know they're not being checked? Okay? But we talked about America First Legal supplied every Secretary of State with the documents that show here's the federal court rulings that says the Social Security Administration and DHS have to provide your Secretary of State with a database that shows citizenship. Okay? They haven't done it yet, but people are acting and they're getting somewhere with this. They have to make this happen before October when most early voting starts. So Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose found 499 more non-registered non-citizens registered to vote in Ohio. Well, how did that happen? Well, I've been in touch with Frank and his staff, and they were able to get access to the SAVE Act. Now, the SAVE Act is this thing that we talked about last week that Chip Roy wants to have added to the continuing resolution that's going to have to be passed to keep the business going, hopefully through March, not till December. Don't do that. Don't do that, Republicans. Okay? But that's the act that says it's illegal for it is illegal for illegals to vote in our elections, federal elections. Okay, and provides this. Well, Frank LaRose was able to get access to that database. Okay, and he said on Thursday, Secretary of State Frank LaRose announced he was directing local election officials to remove nearly 500 foreign nationals registered from Ohio's voter rolls. The suspected illegal registration were detected as part of a statewide audit of Ohio's voter registration database. Well, a little more than 3 months to go before November's presidential election, and a little more than 2 months before the early in-person and absentee voting begins in the Buckeye State, The need to clean up the rules is becoming more urgent every day, with a projected 10 million illegal immigrants encountered at the U.S. border on President Joe Biden's watch. Okay? Those making arguments ignoring a glaring problem. The government officials who register voters and conduct federal elections aren't allowed to require proof of citizenship. We did a story about that a couple weeks ago, wrote Senator Mike Lee from Utah in a recent column for The Federalist. It's therefore shockingly easy for non-citizens to vote in federal elections, leaving our elections dangerously vulnerable to foreign interference. Anyone, even an illegal alien or other non-citizen, can register to vote in federal elections just by checking a box and signing a form. Okay? So, I've been asking, it's listed on our podcast page at WeThePeopleConvention.org. After the links to all the articles, there's a This Week's Asks. What am I asking you to do? And in that, you will see a link that says, demand that your Secretary of State file suit through the Attorney General against the federal government to get real-time access to the Social Security Administration database and the Homeland Security database. The Social Security is everyone born in the United States that gets a Social Security card. They're in that database. They're a citizen. HHS has the database of people who are sworn in to be U.S. citizens, okay? Who are made U.S. citizens legally, okay? They should have, your Secretary of State should have real-time access to those databases every time someone registers. That's how airlines do it. That's how banks do it. Don't tell me you can't do it. You aren't doing it because you want to cheat, okay? You want to cheat. That's the bottom line. And so until we get that, we're vulnerable. I know that Ohio is moving forward on that path. The courts must rule. If it has to go to the Supreme Court, the law is clear as a bell. The Biden regime has no authority to deny us access to those databases, and we got to make this not just for this year, but going forward. So I wanted to share that with you. This is another important story, okay? DHS suspends payroll program amid rampant fraud, okay? So Homeland Security has temporarily shut down its most prominent parole program that allows unauthorized migrants to skip the border and fly directly into U.S. airports after revelations of massive fraud. This is the phone app that the Biden administration created to fly in hundreds of thousands of people into our cities, not going through the border at all. Okay? So listen how great this system is. The department revealed the shutdown after a watchdog, the Federation for American Immigration Reform, released portions of an internal government report showing the extent of the fraud, including the use of dead people's Social Security numbers and the same addresses used for thousands of applications. DHS has temporarily paused the issuance of advanced travel authorizations for new beneficiaries while it undertakes a review of supporter applications. DHS will restart application processing as quickly as possible with appropriate safeguards, they announced on Friday. Appropriate safeguards? How about this program's illegal from the get-go? The controversial program applies to people from Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua. And I'm going to talk about Cuba here in a couple of minutes. It offers them parole into the U.S. despite having no legal visa to enter, as long as they pre-schedule their arrivals and get an affidavit from some entity in the U.S. promising to support them. A government NGO that our tax dollars pay for. Okay, it's bullcrap. Those affidavits are full of fraud. The same 100 IP addresses were used on more than 51,000 applications, meaning an NGO in Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, or Nicaragua that we pay for is sitting there on their computers applying for these applications to fly in the United States. One single address in Tijuana, Mexico was used 1,328 times. Looking at individual sponsors, some 3,200 names were responsible for more than 100,000 applications. So that says you got to get an affidavit from some entity in the U.S. promising to support them. Yeah. So it says that 3,200 names were responsible for 100,000 applications. Those 3,200 people are going to take care of 100,000 immigrants, right? That works out to each of these persons sponsoring more than 30 migrants apiece. At the most common sponsors, 24 of them use Social Security numbers belonging to a dead person. FAIR, the group that's brought this, is just saying it's astounding. The program known within the government by the acronym CHNV is one of several parolees established by the Biden administration. They're acting as a presidentially fabricated immigration system working around the limits set by Congress. They're illegal. They're criminal. This program is criminal intent to violate the law as Congress passed it on immigration. They have no authority to do this. And Mayorkas and Biden and the rest of them need to be charged. This is intentional breaking of immigration law. And then I have one more story about the courts and the elections. And Arizona is just such a shit show. What is going on in Arizona? Is the heat affecting your brains? What's going on there? Okay, now we've had some good rulings, and the guy who was the Republican, quote unquote, who was behind all the election fraud, lost his primary this week. We were very glad to hear that. Carrie Lake won her primary big time. We're happy to see that. Blake Masters lost in a close race. I was kind of happy to see that because of the Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance connection. But this stuff drives me crazy. It seemed like the Democrats' rule of thumb is, if you can't win, cheat. On Thursday, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed itself and will now allow Arizonans to register to vote in federal races without having to prove citizenship, even though their Constitution says only citizens can vote in federal elections. Okay? But the Ninth Circuit ruled this. It's another dizzying swerve in the legal battle over a 2022 law that aims ultimately to reverse portions of the National Voter Registration Act and require all Arizona voters to show proof of citizens to register to vote. The order reopens a path for potential voters who just 2 weeks ago were barred from using the state voter registration form to sign up to vote unless they could produce proof of U.S. citizenship. See, in Arizona, they have this stupid law that says non-citizens can vote in our state elections. Why would you allow that? Right? Why would you allow that? But they do. So then they want you to be able to, once you register to vote in a state election, to use that as proof you can vote in the federal election, even though no one asked you to prove your citizenship. It's insane. It's insane. It comes with 2 months left before the October 7th citizenship registration deadline for the high-stakes presidential election. The order means people can again use the state-issued voter registration form even if they don't produce proof of citizenship. Instead, they attest under penalty of perjury that they are citizens, are limited to voting in federal races only. In the first 10 days after the July 18th ruling that required documentary proof, the Maricopa County Recorder's Office said it had rejected 200 voter applications, meaning the law that said you had to show proof of citizenship was preventing 200 voters just in a few days from illegally voting. On Thursday, the Arizona Secretary of State's office clarified the impact of the ruling. This is what the Arizona Secretary of State's office said. Election officials may not reject voter registration applicants submitted without DPOC, regardless of which form is used. Okay? That's shorthand for saying, that the documentary of proof of citizenship. There's only one reason to allow Arizonans the ability to register to vote without proving citizenship, and that's to let illegals vote. That's why Joe Biden opened up the border, and that's why the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed itself. Folks, it's the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. It's got to be appealed now to the Supreme Court. Can you get an emergency act of the Supreme Court? I don't know. But it just showed you. They caught people when they asked for proof. If they're not asking for proof, how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of illegals are going to vote in Arizona? It's disgusting. It's just disgusting. Okay? Let's see here. What's our next thing? All right, but this is a good thing, because remember, Trump has vowed the biggest deportation effort in the history of America if he's elected. Okay? We're going to deport these millions of illegals. The Supreme Court ruled this week, making it harder for illegal immigrants to oppose that deportation. It's basically the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday issued a decision that makes it harder for illegal immigrants to subject to a deportation order to challenge their removal from the country on the grounds that the government sent them an initial notice to appear that lacked a time and place for their hearing, even though it followed up with a second notice that contained this information. In a 5-4 decision issued on June 14th, with Justice Neil Gorsuch joining the liberal minority in dissent, the High Court sided with the government in upholding the legitimacy of what amounts to a 2-step notification system in the process of deporting illegal immigrants that effectively removes one basis for them to get their removal or rescinded. The Illegal Immigration Reform and Integration Responsibility Act mandates the government issue written notice to illegal immigrants who are either inadmissible or deportable, informing them about the removal proceedings they're subject to. So basically, this ruling sets the table to make it easier to deport these people who are going to claim you can't deport me because of a technicality. My original form, which many of them didn't even get, doesn't say the date and time of my court appearance. So I think that was a good hearing that you need to know about. Okay, on to international affairs. Folks, this is just wrong. All right, Hezbollah rocket attacks on Israel kills mostly children playing soccer. It's now looking like war between Israel and Lebanon is inevitable as Iranian terror proxy Hezbollah continues to attack the Israeli people. A rocket attack on a soccer ground in the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights on Saturday that's a week ago today, killed at least 12 people, mostly children, Israeli authorities said, blaming Hezbollah and vowing to respond against the Iranian-backed Lebanese group. Hezbollah, which the United States designates as a terrorist organization, denied any responsibility for the strikes, which was the deadliest in Israel or Israeli-controlled territory since the start of the Gaza conflict, which was sparked by the Hamas terror group's deadly incursion and killing 1,500 and some Israelis. Okay? Now, so are we on the brink of total war? Are we on the brink of total war? Well, Israel is not going to let you kill their children and not react. And they did, very forcefully. Hezbollah's top military commander, Fad Shakur, and the chairman of Hamas's political bureau, Ismail Haniyeh, were killed within hours of each other on the nights between the 30th and 31st of July. Israel claimed responsibility for the attack in Beirut, saying it was a response to the tragic events of July 27th when 12 children were killed in the Druze town of Majid Sham in the Golan Heights. The assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, however, came as a surprise without any Israeli authority taking responsibility for it. Now, that was really interesting, okay? The political leader of Hamas, who was living in exile in Doha, was in Tehran to attend the swearing-in ceremony of Iran's new president, Mossad Pezeshkian, when he was killed. He was in Tehran when he was killed. Known as one of the most moderate voices within the Islamic group, his death further jeopardizes the already slim hopes of a successful ceasefire negotiation in Gaza. Now, here's the interesting fact. They killed the guy in Tehran. The Israeli Defense Forces, their secret agents, had planted the bomb months ago and waited to detonate it that night. Okay? That's a big deal. That's a big deal. The two killings risk widening the conflict to the entire region. The response from Hezbollah, Hamas, and especially Iran, which has suffered a major setback in its ability to defend its own soil, will determine whether the conflict will escalate or not. Here's some comments. The Israeli assassination of Hamas political bureau leader Ismail Haniyeh pushes away any chance of achieving a ceasefire in the short term, whether or not this was an actual possibility. The unprecedented attack on Iranian soil showed Netanyahu's readiness to take major escalatory steps in the regional confrontation with Israel's rivals. Iran has shown in the past that its goal is to avoid a direct conflict with Israel. Yeah, it's so much easier to attack them with proxies. They're in direct conflict with Israel through these proxies. Such bullcrap. Okay? But the sophisticated killing of Hanani is a blow to Iranian security services that will probably require a harsher response. The elimination of the prominent Hamas leader is a long-standing Israeli tactic that has had little effect on the movement's political and military capabilities. Hanani's death might even increase the internal political leverage of Hamas military wing that planned to carry out the October attacks, basically citing, we need to do more. Okay? Well, I don't know. Killing their leaders has a way of patting things down. Anyway, it just took one night to plunge the entire region once again on the brink of total war. 2 targeted killings and 2 capitals that brings the long-feared process of regional escalation even closer. Although unprecedented in its method, the killing of Fuad Shukr confirms what has been Israel's strategy for months, degrading Hezbollah's military and operational capabilities strike by strike. However, the hardest blow was dealt to Iran. Not only does this assassination of Hanani expose all the weaknesses of Iran's security apparatus, but it also tarnishes the country's image on the international stage. Okay? So, here's how I read this. Israel just showed Iran, you better not pick this fight. You pick this fight, we can hit you anytime, any place, any way. Okay? So they may do a similar thing where, remember, Iran launched all those rockets, 1,000 or whatever the hell it was, hundreds of rockets against Israel, and none of them hit. Okay? They're going to do a symbolic show of force, but they're not going to react because they ain't going to win. Israel's not going to let them win. The problem is the U.S. might let them win because right away, Hezbollah kills 12 Israeli children in a drone strike, and our government says, tolerance. You should have tolerance. No. You shouldn't have tolerance. You should do exactly what Israel did. We support them 1,000%. Okay. In other international news, U.S. recognizes Venezuela's Edmundo Gonzalez as winner of the presidential election. Yeah, except they didn't, okay? This is bullcrap. The United States acknowledged Venezuela's opposition candidate, Eduardo Gonzalez, as the winner of the country's presidential election, because he did. He got way more votes, okay? U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said on Thursday that overwhelming evidence from polling stations published by the opposition party made clear to the United States that the Venezuelan people, that the country's authoritarian leader won fewer votes, okay? But let's be clear. Maduro, the commie thug who's been running, Venezuela, was propped up by Joe Biden's buying of billions of dollars of oil, and as Trump calls it, tar. It's garbage oil from Venezuela when he shut down our drilling on government lands. Okay? So they're just posturing. We don't support, the opposition party won. There's no teeth behind it. We're the sanctions. There aren't any sanctions. Remember, Venezuela is where the Dominion software started. The company that wrote the software that could cause the cheating in Venezuela is now Dominion and is used in our elections. Okay? So here's the problem. They just stole the election in Venezuela, and the people rose up. And there's riots, and some people have been killed, okay? But it looks like the dictator is going to hold power because people like the United States didn't shut off the oil purchases to force them out. Okay? We got to watch around the world because it affects us, affects you and me. Okay? Speaking of affecting you and me, I had to put this story out because it really made me mad. Communists march in Philadelphia and legacy media totally ignores it. If 6 nut jobs dressed up like Nazis and marched a few blocks in Illinois, the legacy media would cover it wall to wall. Why do they have no interest in covering the march of real communists in Philadelphia? Hundreds of members of the Revolutionary Communists of America marched through the streets of downtown Philadelphia last Sunday, following the conclusion of their first party Congress of the United States. The nascent far-left Trotskyist political party is an offshoot of the Revolutionary Communist Party in Great Britain and a member of the Revolutionary Communist International. the communist group, new to the U.S. political scene, should not be confused with other American communist parties, including the Maoist-aligned Revolutionary Communist Party USA, a personality cult dedicated to Bob Ivanka's thought, and the Communist Party USA, the country's oldest communist political party, founded in 1919, right? We have all these commies in the United States, okay? But I want to make an important point. While the U.S. corporate media is focused on marches organized by neo-Nazi groups, some suspected of being federal entrapment operations, they had very little coverage of this march in Philadelphia. According to the Revolutionary Congress of America's own website, the group embraces violent and militant class struggle in an effort to launch an American socialist revolution. Is that free speech? I contend it's not. It's sedition. Sedition is a serious criminal offense in the United States with severe penalties, including substantial fines and lengthy prison sentences of up to 20 years. The legal framework aims to protect the stability and authority of the government against attempts to incite rebellion or violence. Sedition is defined as an action or speech that incite revolt or violence against lawful authority with the intent to destroy or overthrow it. So what does the RCA say? The RCA says, is a party of class fighters committed to complete overthrow of capitalism, the group states. We fight for a world of material superabundance and reject the artificial scarcity of a system based on the pursuit of profits. Additionally, they state they fight to build a revolutionary leadership worthy of the name and to establish a workers' government. Okay? They are seditionists. Every one of these people should be round up and arrested and charged with sedition. Why aren't they? Why aren't they? Yeah, because the commies have infiltrated our government and they're in charge of our government. And they ain't locking up any commies. They sure are locking up patriots from January 6th, right? A couple more quick stories here. I was glad to see Defense Secretary Austin revokes the plea deal with the accused 9/11 mastermind. There's a lot of outrage this week that they basically took the death penalty off the table for the architects of 9/11. Why haven't they been killed already? That's what I want to know. All right. So there's all kinds of people upset, particularly the people whose relatives were killed in 9/11 when it was announced that they had reached a plea deal. Now Austin intervenes and says, we're getting rid of that. Okay? Stupid. Just stupid on his face. The other thing I don't want to say a lot about was the hostage deal. Okay? I'm sure glad to see the Wall Street Journal reporter and the two other Americans get to come home. But again, why do we keep doing hostage deals where the Russians get 8 people and we get 3? Okay? Why, ask yourself this question, why would Vladimir Putin want to do this deal right before the election? I thought Putin wanted Trump. Maybe not, huh? Maybe not. Just a question. Just a question. We had a terrible jobs report. Trump campaign nails Kamala-onomics. Boy, is that hard to say. Kamala-onomics as stock market crashes on bad unemployment report. Well, there's more going on here than that, but let me just read the story. The stock market reacted negatively to a bad unemployment report, and the Trump campaign lambasted Democrats for what some said are signs of a coming recession. Kamala Harris has proudly and repeatedly celebrated her role as Joe Biden's co-pilot on Bidenomics. She cast tie-breaking votes in the Senate for spending that put inflation on steroids, and despite the evidence of American working families are hurting, she tells us these failed plans are working. Okay? So he put out, this statement. The report, jobs report, documented a sharp upturn in unemployment rate from 4.1 to 4.3%. We only created like 160,000 jobs nationally in the quarter. The Dow Jones Index dropped 800 points on the news after losing nearly 500 points on Thursday. The S&P 500 index dropped 108 points, or about 2%, while the NASDAQ dropped 384 points, or 2.2%. The report also triggered what is known as a sham roll, SAHM, I don't know what that is, which is named after an economist and predicts that the economy is headed into recession. The Biden administration has been trying to argue that its policies have worked to broaden the employment base and raise wages, even as inflation has eroded America's buying power. The economy is a weak spot for Democrats, as polls show. Most Americans blame President Joe Biden for high inflation and believe the economy is slipping. A majority of respondents said they trust Republicans on an economy, while far fewer said they trust the Democrats. We need to wrap that around Kamala Harris's neck, okay? But here's the other part of this. The market's down because a lot of businesses are afraid that the left is going to be able to do what they did with Joe Biden and install Kamala Harris, which would be horrible for business, would be horrible for inflation. She wants to increase spending by $10 trillion on climate nonsense, folks. The market is scared because they're worried that they're going to install Kamala Harris, okay? And we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's what I think is going on. Not just the jobs report. I think they're worried about, the new, effort by the left to cheat, okay, as I've documented here in this podcast. I did post on our website what I think is an important thing. Donald Trump went to Nashville and spoke to 22,000 Bitcoin enthusiasts at their convention. This is important. It's important to you even if you don't know it, okay? There's been a lot of misinformation about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and all that stuff. Let me just say to you, if we are ever to have freedom and individual liberty and prosperity and ownership of property in the future, we are going to have to adopt cryptocurrencies, which is a form of money not controlled by the government. That's why the government is against it. So Trump had a very big, rally. These 22,000 younger people who would normally not be Republicans, many of them are libertarians. And here's what he said. Former President Donald Trump outlined a plan to turbocharge crypto growth and make the U.S. a crypto mining powerhouse in his keynote address. Trump announced that if elected, he would create a strategic Bitcoin reserve in the U.S. It will be the policy of my administration to keep 100% of all Bitcoin the U.S. government currently holds or acquires in the future as a core of the strategic national Bitcoin stockpile. So that's like the gold reserves, but Bitcoin. Right now, the U.S. government owns more than 210,000 Bitcoins that were seized via illegal operations like the online dart market Silk Road and the Ponzi scheme BitConnect. That Bitcoin held by the U.S. government is worth $15 billion at this writing. The move confirmed rumors spread by Bitcoin enthusiasts who are hopeful that the endorsement of the reserve from Trump could bolster the price of cryptocurrency, which they hold. They obviously have a self-interest. Trump also announced plans to appoint a Bitcoin and Crypto Advisory Council whose task would be to design transparent regulatory guidance to the benefit of your industry, not to outlaw cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, but to legitimize it, okay? In the first 100 days of his next presidency, he said he wanted the U.S. to become the crypto capital of the world. Love that. Trump also pledged to create a framework for ensuring the safe expansion of stable coins, allowing us to extend the dominance of the USD in other places around the world, and doubled down on his vow to scrap any efforts to create a digital bank digital currency, a central bank digital currency. Trump said, I'm not going to do that. Or digital dollar, saying there will never be a CBDC while I'm president of the United States. Folks, that is what freedom is all about. That's what you're fighting for if you want freedom. I got news for you. If Trump doesn't win, you're going to be a slave because they're going to control every dollar you have. You won't be able to do anything without their knowing. It's always, I will always defend the right of self-custody, he told the exalted crowd. What got perhaps the biggest cheer was the day one promised to fire the Securities and Exchange Commission Chair, Gary Gensler. The moment I am sworn in, the prosecution stops and the weaponizing against your industry ends, he said, name-checking Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts as the industry's sworn emissary. He promised to make regulations friendly for crypto mining operations in the U.S. so workers wouldn't have to move to China. Trump promised again to free Ross Ulbricht in prison for life for his involvement in the underground market Silk Road. I'm not sure what that's all about. Some of you may. The crowd, let's see. Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming then appeared before the crowd right after Trump spoke and announced a present for President Donald Trump. the Bitcoin reserve bill she's been drafting. This is our Louisiana Purchase moment, she said, elaborating that the bill would take the Bitcoin President Trump just mentioned and put it into the reserve, and that's only the beginning. Over 5 years, according to this bill, the United States would assemble 1 million Bitcoin. She added 5% of the world's Bitcoin, and it will be held for a minimum of 20 years and can be used for one purpose only, to reduce the U.S. federal debt. That's a big deal, folks. The bill further provides the U.S. will convert excess reserves at our 12 Federal Reserve banks into Bitcoin over 5 years, so that instead of holding a depreciating asset, the U.S. dollar, it will be holding an asset with potential for growth. Folks, go to our website and watch Trump's speech and read the article. I know this is foreign to you, but it's got to be really centered to your understanding of freedom and liberty. We have to move towards cryptocurrency, and we as the United States have to lead it if the world is going to be free. Okay, going to move through these other stories here. I know this podcast is going to be long, so I'm going to try to move a little quicker. Court blocks FCC reinstatement of net neutrality rules for broadband internet. I think this is a good thing. The FCC tried to impose its rules where basically they want to control what your internet provider charges you, how much bandwidth you get. That's socialized, okay? The court said you can't do that. You got to go to court, all right? This is another important story. IRS employees owe $50 million in back taxes, right? Remember when they hired 100,000 new IRS agents to go after you and me to collect all the money that we're cheating the government out of, even though the federal government is getting the most money, like $5 trillion this year in taxes on us, the most ever? That ain't enough. Oh, but a million, let's see. According to the Daily, a recent audit by the United States Treasury Department Inspector General found that the multiple employees of the IRS collectively owe around $50 million in back taxes. According to Daily Wire, the amount is a total of over 3,800 individual IRS employees, 2,000 of which have not yet established payment plans, and at least 50 of these employees have worked for the IRS for 5 years or more. So a bunch of these, if there's 3,200 of them or 3,800 of them, and 50 of them have worked for 5 years or more, these 3,800 of them are new hires. So IRS hired agents to look into your taxes, but didn't look into their taxes. Can't get any dumber than that, folks. Can't get any dumber than that. There's also, in this investigation, they found beyond the IRS an estimated 150,000 federal employees out of like the 2 million or so federal employees owe back taxes amounting to $1.5 billion. This audit was requested by Iowa Senator Joni Ernst. Way to go, Joni. If you're in Iowa, send a note to Joni Ernst and say, this is what we need. We need you to look out after our money, okay? I said I would mention Cuba in the previous thing about how the Obama administration was flying people in from, Argentina and Cuba and all that with this bogus, app. Well, folks, Cuba, right? That the left always talks about, oh, it's great to be a communist. Great to be a communist? How about they've lost 10% of their population have fled since 2022. In just 2 years, 10% have come, guess where? To the United States. More than 1 million people, and most of them have come to the United States, courtesy of President Biden's open border policies and the miserable record of our border czar, Vice President Kamala Harris, now nominee. They're not just watching ashore in Florida. Many, many Cubans are showing up on the southern border and waltzing right in. Do you guys remember that when Biden first got in office, they wouldn't let people leave Cuba and come to Florida. They would let anybody else in the world come in, but they were stopping them, right? Because again, the commies in the Biden administration don't want to hurt the commies in Cuba, okay? But then they said, oh, well, we'll just go around the southern border, and they did. 645,122 Cubans have entered under the Biden's program, according to reports, and that's not counting unknown numbers of gotaways. We have no idea who some of these people are. We have no idea if they have criminal records, Senator Marco Rubio said on the Senate floor this month. And the illegal entrants are receiving generous benefits, infuriating immigrants who did it the right way, Rubio noted. One of the things I see a lot in South Florida are people who have been in this country, maybe came to Cuba from Cuba 45 years ago. They've worked here their entire lives. They pay taxes and are sons of Cuban immigrants. And then they run into somebody who just got here from Cuba 3 months ago, who's 29 years old, doesn't work, and is given $1,500 a month in benefits from our government because they're refugees. Okay? It's just not fair. But that's what's going on. They need to be deported. Again, they need to be deported. This is good news. We've been talking about this a lot. University of Alabama is the latest school to close its diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI offices, joining public colleges in Texas and Florida and doing away with the program that encouraged discrimination based on sex and race. The publicly funded university closed its DEI offices at the Tuscaloosa, Birmingham, and Huntsville campuses on Tuesday in order to comply with a recently passed Alabama law prohibiting public institutions from promoting diverse concepts, according to a report by the New York Post. In your state, this has got to happen. DEI must die. It is white racism. It is racism against white people. That's all it is. You can't fix racism with racism. You have to fix racism with merit. Hold people accountable for merit. May the best man or woman win. That's what made America great. That's why we said last week or the week before, this whole DEI thing is dying, as is CRT and everything else. Keep fighting in these institutions. I thought this is a really good story that many of you may not know about, but I want it because I want to highlight the fact that you have to keep fighting. Dr. Mary Talley Bowden notches a big win. The Texas Medical Board has dismissed a pending case against Dr. Bowden. In a victory for Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, the Texas Medical Board recently dismissed a case against her. A Walgreens pharmacist reported Bowden to the Texas Medical Board after she prescribed ivermectin in late 2023. Dr. Bowden announced the outcome of the case on X, expressing gratitude to her supporters whose subscriptions helped her cover the legal expenses. Bowden is still contending with complaints from Houston Methodist Hospital and Texas Health Hughley Hospital for her work on behalf of patients during the pandemic. The Texas Medical Board pursuit of Bowden in these cases has been called bureaucratic abuse. As a medical practitioner, Dr. Bowden has a high public profile due to her treatment methods during the COVID-19 pandemic and her advocacy of affordable alternatives treatments. Her actions upset the status quo and sparked controversy within the medical community, leading to multiple complaints and disparate actions against her. Bowden argues the legal and administrative actions taken against her are politically motivated and part of the broader effort by the medical lobby to suppress independent medical opinions. So basically, I want you to know that she's fighting all these years, like so many other, Dr. McCullough, right, and others, and she's winning. The fight doesn't end. Truth and justice must be pursued to the end. She deserves credit for hanging in there. We're really proud of her. That's great. And if you know her or support her, thank you for you doing that, and write to her and say congratulations. This is an interesting thing. Senate unanimously passes landmark bill to add 66 federal judgeships. Now I'm like, wow, this may not be good. What is this about? So let me tell you, the Senate has passed a bipartisan legislation to create dozens of additional judgeships on federal district courts across the United States after a multi-decade dry spell when Congress added no new judges. The measure, called the Judicial Understaffing Delays Getting Emergency Solved Act, Judges Act, God, I hate these damn names, cleared the upper chamber by unanimous consent on August 1st and now heads to the House for consideration. The Judges Act of 2024 seeks to create 63 permanent and 3 temporary judgeships on federal trial courts, and is signed into law by President Joe Biden, will mark the first time since 1990s that Congress has created additional district judgeships. The bill which passes Senate Judiciary Committee by a unanimous vote in June, implements recommendations from the 2023 Judicial Conference of the United States by establishing new judgeships to be filled over the course of 2 presidential terms. It also introduces temporary measures, transparency members, and provisions aimed at improving access to justice in underserved regions. So my question is, it says to be filled over the course of 2 presidential terms. My hope is that this will not pass until Trump is in office, and he will be the first to do this. But I think we need to pass legislation that allows us to impeach these judges who are not following the Constitution and are just basically communists who hate the Constitution and who lied when they swore their oath. So we'll see how this plays out. It may help us if we get to appoint the judges, but I sure would like to have a whole lot less judges, whole lot less more judges. Okay, so now to wrap up the show, I want to highlight this because I think it's really important and is a tool we can use. Many of you are aware that of the controversy in the Olympics where a trans man beat the heck out of a real woman Olympic boxer who quit after 46 seconds. For everyone with the woke mind virus, this little bit of reality will expose the trans fraud once and for all. What kind of society condones the public beating by men? A sick society does. Feminists are once again silent after a female boxer was destroyed in 46 seconds by a biological male in an Olympic matchup. After just 46 seconds, two massive shots to the heads, Italy's Angelina Carini threw her helmet onto the mat and abandoned the bout against the Algerian boxer named Imani Khalifi, shouting, "This is unjust." So I posted, on our website, this story, and I wanted you to be able to see the fight. But you'll see down here that I found out before today's podcast that this media has been disabled in response to a report by the copyright owner, Don't You Know? So I had to go find another version of this fight so you could show other people. And so I'm going to play it for you now, and it's now on our page.
That's some quick replays of the very short-lived action in the women's welterweight bout there between Angela Carini and Iman Khalif. Iman Khalif taking the win. Carini choosing to abandon the bout. Plays of the very short-lived action.
Okay? You need to share that with anyone who's dumb enough and woke enough to think that men should be in women's sports. We got to use this. Just like we talked last week about charging the Cheadle, the Secret Service head, with perjury for lying to Congress about all agents have to meet the same standards, not because we just want to put her in prison or fine her. That'd be great because she deserves it. But also because we want to highlight that DEI is deadly. It's deadly. It could have killed President Trump because they hired women who were not qualified, not because they're women, but because they couldn't meet the standards of height, of strength, real standards, not subjective, objective standards. Here, they've got these men, and there was another fight. These two men, they're going to kill somebody. They're going to. J.K. Rowling, the writer of Harry Potter, said, "What do we have to do? Do we have to wait for a man to kill a woman on live TV before we wake the hell up?" I say, no, we don't. I say, share this story. Okay? Go to the WeThePeopleConvention.org, use the share icons on the page, text it, email it, post it on social media, and say, this must stop. Demand that it stop. Okay? That's another ask for you this week. All right, so we're going to wrap up to this podcast. Thank you again for everyone who's donating to the Freedom Fund, our 2024 Victory Fund. We need this to do things in federal elections. Go to freedomforallpac.org, freedomforallpac.org, and make your donations to our federal super PAC so that we can spend money making signs, doing radio commercials, doing robocalls, whatever we can do, doing IP targeting to help elect Republicans to the Senate and to Congress. Okay? Go to freedomforallpac.org. As always, I want to remind you the most important thing you can do is tell other people about this podcast. The more people who see it, the more who will act on the things I ask you to do. And those will all be listed on the podcast page after each of the items, and the links to those articles are there. It'll say this week's acts. And again, I know there's a lot in this podcast. Use our new chapters player to just watch the pieces you want. You can just go read the story names and click, and it'll play me that part of the podcast only. Use the tools we provide you with. But don't forget also to write to me and say, you were wrong about this, or I disagree, or here's a new story link. Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. info@wethepeopleconvention.org. We read them all. We get a lot of the information in this show comes from you. We just produce it and perform it. It's your podcast, okay? And it's a good one. I don't think you can find one anywhere else on the internet, but you got to help promote it. And believe me, we're being blocked, folks. I mean, I just can't tell you how much we're being blocked, even on Twitter. Even on Twitter. That's why I need you to go to Twitter and follow me at TomZWTPC and try to share the links I put out, because I don't know what's going on with the Twitter logarithm, but I can't gain any members. I get every day people say, so-and-so followed you, so-and-so followed you. My number never goes up. Okay? We're blocked from YouTube. We're blocked from Facebook. It's up to you to use the tools we give you to help win this war of information. Okay? Now, I say again, do not overreact to the propaganda. I showed you it's all phony. You need to show other people it's all phony. Hey, by the way, do you see they're paying for people to go to Kamala Harris's rallies? See, they're paying for that thing you saw on social media? It's all bot. It's not real. These polls are fake. Google's cheating. Okay? That's how we win, by educating people. Our people, American citizens aren't stupid. They're just misinformed intentionally. They're propagandized. Our job is to fix that. And then to get them to vote for all Republicans, not just Trump. Okay? All right. We're going to wrap up this week's podcast. I sure appreciate you joining me. I hope that you are well. If you are not well, I hope you get better this week. Okay? God willing, hopefully we'll both be back together next week, next Saturday. Okay? I hope you have a good week. Be sure to do things to keep you mentally sane. Do some good things. Okay? Go for a walk. Don't just watch political news. Listen to some music. Go to a ball game. Something. Protect your mental health. You've got to stay strong, because, man, the worst is yet to come, and we're going to have to be able to rise up, have the strength to rise up and fight and win. I don't doubt it one bit. We're committed to winning, and I believe in my heart of hearts that we're going to win if we just continue not to quit and believe the propaganda and work hard to get out the vote for the candidates we need. Okay? All right. Until next week, my name is Tom Zawistowski, and this is the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. God bless you, and God bless America.
Can you see? the twilight.